just don't like the idea that...
Well, no, your baby's not going to take any risk in drinking formula instead of being breastfed.
That's not a true statement. If you have a newborn baby, you want to feed them at a minimum of every 4 to 5 hours because some babies, they sleep a long time. And if you're in a lot of pain breastfeeding, that's a sign that something is not going correctly because it's not supposed to be painful. Granted, the first couple weeks are going to be painful. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. Nobody's ever had their use that much before in their life, okay? There are women who are very, 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 very flat-chested. They're never gonna be able to make enough milk. And that's how it is. Some women are not genetically gifted in that way. And it would make sense for you to pursue formula in that context. But I'm proud of that. I put in the hours, I put in the work. It's such precious moments for me, and it really helped me to recover from my traumatic birth experience. And you know what? Formula does not compare to breast milk when it comes to nutrition. Breast milk is tailor-made. It is the perfect food for an infant. Welcome back to the Femcast. Today we are going to be covering my breastfeeding testimonial because I was able to breastfeed my first child for 14 months. I would have done it longer, but I wasn't able to ovulate during my lactation, and because of that, I cut it a little bit short since I wanted to start trying to have another baby. But other women that are watching, if you don't feel pushed for time at all when it comes to reproduction, breastfeed as long as you want. Some women just don't ovulate during lactation. Other women do ovulate during lactation. I got some girlfriends with some Irish twins. So if you like this content, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, subscribe down below, and hit the notification bell. To start off with, I didn't think I was going to be able to breastfeed, and because I didn't think I was going to be able to breastfeed, I didn't do any research, which was foolish on my part, but I was so worried about being disappointed if I wasn't going to be able to breastfeed because I had a surgical operation done on my chest in my early 20s, and I didn't want to get my hopes up. If I got my hopes up and I couldn't do it, then I was going to be devastated. I'm a very maternal woman, so that would have crushed me. What ended up happening was that I could breastfeed just fine. It just took 5 days for my milk to come in. Women, it's a weird situation if you choose to lactate. I think that you should choose to breastfeed your baby because it is a bonding experience between you two. It's going to have a lovely exchange of oxytocin. They're going to have a more robust immune system. It is the best nutrition for them. I understand formula moms get triggered, but I hate to break it to you. This video is not about you. There's a lot of videos about formula moms somewhere else. This video is about my testimonial in breastfeeding. I have used formula when I was separated from my baby for a few hours. We prefer Kendamil because it's a European formula, so it has cleaner ingredients than American formulas, and it's organic. I was a formula-fed baby. I understand its utility, but I also know that there are a lot of 4-month-old babies who are formula-fed, who are feeding themselves, who aren't even being snuggled. That is the hidden, dark benefit of formula feeding, is that if you give a baby a bottle young enough, soon they'll be able to feed themselves and you don't have to be anywhere near them. That's really sad. We should be wanting to snuggle our children. If you're going to formula feed, at least hold your baby. At the bare minimum, at least hold your baby. And you know what? Formula does not compare to breast milk when it comes to nutrition. Breast milk is tailor-made. It is the perfect food for an infant. I understand that there's lots of reasons why a woman wouldn't be able to breastfeed. I know most women can breastfeed. I know most babies can nurse. It's an incredible minority of women who cannot, but they do exist. Like I said, the rest of the internet is out there for you. I'm just not really here for the formula mom backlash. They're very mean to breastfeeding mothers online. And I'm very proud of my ability to have been able to breastfeed for 14 months, exclusively breastfeed for up to 12 months, and then experimenting with solid foods at that point. But I'm proud of that. I put in the hours, I put in the work. It's such precious moments for me, and it really helped me to recover from my traumatic birth experience where I felt like I didn't have my rights and autonomy honored. I was able to take back my autonomy through nursing my baby, and it's some of my favorite memories of being a mom, and I miss it. I do miss it. We weaned a couple months ago, and still miss those tender moments. But the way that it started out was not helpful. I didn't know what to do, so I started doing like a crash course in figuring out what I needed to do to breastfeed. Keep in mind, I was sleep deprived and postpartum when I did this, so not the right time, guys. Not the right time. Probably want to do your research beforehand. So I came across some content that convinced me that I had to pump every 3 hours or else my milk was going to dry up and it was going to be terrible. Now, I will say, if you have a newborn baby, you want to feed them at a minimum of every 4 to 5 hours because some babies, they sleep a long time. Okay. In the 5-hour mark, that is pushing it. You might want to try to wake them up and feed them or stir them a little bit and latch them on. But I was convinced that I had to pump every 3 hours, and I was convinced of this for 6 weeks. And it took such a toll on my mental health versus just keeping the baby on the breast, because I'm not a working mom. I don't even work from home necessarily. I mean, I do YouTube videos sometimes, but that's very much in my own control. So there was no real reason for me to pump. Also, there was this weird expectation that I got from the hospital and from online that my baby had to eat every 3 hours. Babies are people. They have their own choices that they make. They have their own desires, and they don't always want to eat every 3 hours on the dot. I don't know why I thought that that was something that had to be happening. Maybe I thought it was kind of an instinct, but in the end, it ended up driving me nuts. When my baby was a newborn, they slept for long stretches of time that concerned me. Now, my baby slept for 7 hours once, and I was able to kind of nurse them while they sleep. I call it dream eating. I was able to do that. But there were other moments where they slept for a long period of time, and I could have been sleeping too, but instead I thought that I had to pump, and I was pumping a lot. I was triple feeding. Because it took a while for my milk to come in, I did have to feed my baby formula, I think in their 3rd day of life. They were just hungry, and they couldn't be consoled, and I wasn't making enough milk. That still meant to me that I needed to make sure that I was nursing and following that up with a 10 to 20 minute pump session afterward, just because I needed to speed things along, and it is a supply and demand situation. At the beginning, it's very driven by hormones as well. So I knew I wasn't making enough. So let me make sure that I'm still getting the stimulation. Now, past those early days, I don't think it really made sense to pump as much as I was doing, because for every pump, you're skipping out on actually nursing the baby. It makes more sense if you nurse them and then you pump for 10 to 20 minutes afterward if you think that your supply needs to increase. However, with all the pumping that I did, I ended up being an overproducer, an oversupplier. Because of that extra stimulation, I would make a lot of extra milk that my baby didn't need because I coached my body to making more milk. So that would happen. And then I would cut back on nursing, and then my supply would dip. So not to get graphic, my breast would get really full, and then my breast would get lighter. And when my breast got lighter, I would freak out, think I'm drying up. Oh my gosh, I need to go and I need to pump right now. And then I would pump again. And then it would continue the cycle. I would oversupply, my supply would dip, I would freak out, and then I would pump again. And it would keep happening like that. That's what made it so hard for me, and leading to a mental breakdown 6 weeks in, where I just gave up. Had a conversation with God. I said, God, I'm just going to trust you that my body can do this. Because at this point, it was proven that my surgical history did not impact my ability to lactate or to nurse. And by me making this video, you can tell I was able to nurse for 14 months. So things got really good and gravy. I will say your first 6 weeks set the tone for your supply afterward. So you do want to make sure that you're getting adequate stimulation if you have a baby that sleeps quite a bit. For example, if your baby's going to sleep something like 7 or 8 hours, maybe halfway through that, you want to make sure you get a pump session in just to keep things going. Otherwise, your best bet is just going to be keeping the baby on the breast. That's it. And it is a little bit taxing because you're incapacitated postpartum. You're basically laying down with a baby all day long. They can't move. They can't crawl. I did a lot of co-sleeping. So I felt like I was in a bed with my baby nursing for probably 90 days straight. Genuinely, that's what it felt like. Eventually, I got around to being more mobile and, doing some things and trying to leave the house once a day so I didn't lose my mind. But that's what the early days were like. Some things to consider if you're going to supplement your baby with formula because maybe you're not making enough milk, or maybe your baby doesn't like thawed breast milk, because mine didn't. Mine wanted it straight from the breast, or they wanted formula. So I had to meet their demand. If you are going to supplement with formula, you need to make sure that you are swapping that out for a pump session. So if you give your baby 4 ounces of formula, you want to make sure that you are on the breast pump for 10 to 20 minutes at a minimum to keep your supply up. You don't have to do anything with the milk that you pump. You can just put it straight up down the drain. I did because I knew my baby wasn't going to eat any thawed breast milk. They weren't feeling the vibe. They didn't like the flavor. Something about it was rubbing them the wrong way. So let's talk about teeth, because a lot of women make it seem like it's the end of the world if your breastfeeding baby has teeth. It's really not that bad. It is not that bad. When it is bad, it's when they bite you. Ow, that hurts. Clearly that would hurt. But for the most part, it's not painful. Mostly babies aren't even sucking on the nipple that much. What they're doing is they're triggering a reflex. So I'll kind of explain it to you guys and try to demonstrate, if you will. What they do is they twiddle the nipple with their gums. So they're just putting it in between their gums, and sometimes they have teeth. They're putting it in between their gums and their teeth, and they're just stimulating it. They're not tugging, they're not sucking, none of that. And then what happens is there's a milk ejection reflex, which is different than what happens with a bottle. With bottles, the babies do have to suck. With the breast, the baby's just got to flick the nipple until the milk ejects, and then they start sucking, and then they start eating. So that's what happens. There's a milk ejection reflex, and then babies will start massaging the breast and sucking while that milk comes out. And just to cover some bases so that I can make sure this video is as helpful to new breastfeeding moms that are out there are some reasons why you wouldn't be able to breastfeed. The major reason why a woman wouldn't continue breastfeeding, as surveyed and studied, is going to be pain. And if you're in a lot of pain breastfeeding, that's a sign that something is not going correctly, because it's not supposed to be painful. Granted, the first couple weeks are going to be painful. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. Nobody's ever had their nipples used that much before in their life, okay? So that's going to be painful. You'll want some creams on hand for that, and maybe even some ice packs, whatever you need to get through that pain. But beyond that, you should get into a groove with your baby, and the pain should lessen. If the pain isn't stopping, your baby could have a lip tie or a tongue tie, and that's more common if a baby is born before 40 weeks of gestation. And when I say a lip tie or a tongue tie, what I mean is that there is a septum underneath the tongue, or there is a septum in between the gum and the lip that is altering the way that their mouth can fit to the nipple. And that is something that you can get released. You can have a pediatrician check them out, and they can send you, I think it's occupational therapy. I can't really recall who does the cutting of it, but you can get that addressed and see if it leads to a less painful lactation journey for you. Some other reasons why a woman wouldn't be able to breastfeed would be that there's not enough mammary tissue. There are women who are very, 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 very flat chested. They're never going to be able to make enough milk. And that's how it is. Some women are not genetically gifted in that way. And it would make sense for you to pursue formula in that context. The simple fact is, though, that most women can breastfeed and most babies can nurse. It is that a lot of women just don't want to do it, or they're not doing any research. They're going to come up with 1,000,001 excuses. I don't know how to address all of the 1,000,001 excuses. What I can say is a lot of women think their supply is drying up randomly. That is not true. This is why I'm saying you need to keep the baby on the breast. If they look like they're hungry, put them on. You don't need to have them on for an hour, though. You can have them on for, I believe, 20 minutes each breast should be sufficient. Sometimes it can even be less than that. But that's why I stressed earlier, if you're going to give your baby a bottle of formula, you need to have that with a pump session. If your baby is getting milk from the freezer, from thawed breast milk, you need to make sure that instead of that feeding, you get in a pump session. That's the only way to maintain your milk supply. You think that missing a feeding here and there, it's not going to have a big impact? Yeah, here and there, okay, probably not. But look at the big picture, right? Over a week, how many times did you miss a feeding? 5 times? 7 times? How many times over a month? Was it 10 times? That's a lot of feedings that you've missed, and if you're not pumping to compensate for that, you will dry up, and it's not a surprise. A lot of women want to say, I don't know why I dried up, it just happened overnight. There's usually reasons for that. Now, allegedly, some women can dry up overnight from stress. I don't know how much I believe that, because I think that humans are much sturdier than that. You do need to be eating extra calories in order to lactate. Some women lose weight from breastfeeding. Some women keep weight on. I kept weight on when I was breastfeeding. That could have been because that's more time than I'm spending nursing, which is less time that I have available to work out. Or it could have just been the hormones, and it could have been the cravings that I had, that I wanted to eat more snacks in order to keep up lactation. Who really knows? I can't tell you. Some final tips about breastfeeding. That way we can have this video be the maximum use to my female audience. You probably are going to get a breast pump from your insurance. It's going to come with flanges, the cones that go on your breasts that connect to the pump in order to extract milk. Those flanges probably are not the size of your nipple. They come in a size 24 millimeter. Most women are not 24 millimeters. When I say 24 millimeters, I mean that you have to actually measure your nipple when it's erect. You have to do that in order to find out the size of flange that you need. And on top of that, you might find that one nipple could be bigger than the other. So you might need 2 different flange types to use with your pump to properly empty the breast. Another piece of information, if you are pumping, you need a primary pump. If you're going to have the wearable pumps, they're not as strong, right? Your wearable pump cannot be your primary pump, because the power that is being used from a battery is weaker than the power that's going to be used from a pump that's plugged in directly to the wall. So it's fine if Every now and then you're busy, you're using your wearable pump, but you want to make sure more often than not, if you are pumping or if you're an exclusive pumper, that you are using your primary pump that's connected to the outlet. These are all ways that you can keep your milk supply up. These are all ways that you can ensure you have comfort. If you are a new mom, and again, the pain is really difficult for you to cope through, try something called nipple shields. I wouldn't have been able to continue breastfeeding had I not used nipple shields. Nipple shields are these thin silicone sheets that you can use if your nipples are raw. That way you can continue to breastfeed your baby. However, you don't want to be overly reliant on nipple shields because it dulls the sensation and the stimulation that your nipple receives. And if that happens over time, it can reduce your milk supply. You can test it out yourself. Put it on your breast, flick it. Not going to feel the same as if you had the nipple shield off and then you flicked it. It's a difference in sensation, right? It's the same thing that's going to happen with a baby that's stimulating the milk injection reflex. It's going to be more dull. So you don't want to be overly reliant on that. That's all I have to say about my breastfeeding testimonial. I loved it. I grew my baby organic, so fun, such a sweet moment. I can talk about transitioning to solid foods if any of you ladies are curious. Let me know in the comment section down below if that's something that you want me to talk about, because I think people make up these arbitrary rules when it comes to being a mom and like how to feed your baby appropriately. I let my baby eat what they want pretty much when they want. I just try to keep unhealthy options at a minimum. But honestly, I think one time my baby had a Funyun for breakfast and I just let it happen because I'm of the opinion if your baby's craving fats, they're going to pursue fats. It's for a reason. If they're craving carbs, they're going to pursue carbs. It's for a reason. If they're craving protein, they're going to pursue protein, and it's for a reason. It's whatever nutrient their body is deficient in that they're naturally going to seek out if you provide them all of them options. If you're giving them options of protein, carbs, and fats, they're going to pick what they're needing. That's what I believe. So no, I'm not going to freak out about the one time my baby had a Funyun for breakfast. I provide other options, yes, and I do try to cook from scratch if I can. Also, babies are picky eaters, and you know what? It might take you months to find a food that your baby would even like to eat. That's how I started putting my baby on solids, was I found one food that they were into. We still have that food available almost every day to this day. And it has been several months, but that's their jam. They love waking up to it and I give it to them. And right now I do have my baby on dairy milk. So my last baby, I hope to breastfeed as long as possible. And I probably will. If I could take it all the way to 2 years, I would do that. That's what the World Health Organization recommends. You have to think it's not just about nutrition, and there are increased risks for some viruses when it comes to formula feeding. And this is not to put down formula moms that are formula feeding in earnest. I just don't like the idea that, well, no, your baby's not going to take any risk in drinking formula instead of being breastfed. That's not a true statement. Everything is about trade-offs and choices in life, and so is breastfeeding versus formula feeding. And a trade-off is you're compromising on the immune factors that your baby is intaking. That's a fact. So let me know what you think about breastfeeding in the comment section down below. Sorry to my male viewers. I'm sure that was very boring to you. I highly recommend it. Think all women should choose it. And if any of you ladies are really confused about breastfeeding, my life's pretty slow right now, so you could email me and I would probably get back to you about how you could pursue lactation. I will see you guys next time. Bye.